Welcome back. This week on Movie Beings, we are going to be talking about The Brutalist, 2024-2025 film, just nominated for a shit ton of Oscars, Adrien Brody, director, best film, and today we're going to talk about it, see how we go.
Beings?
So I think out of all of the nominations, this is one of your favorite.
Well, thinking about it, I think maybe like 4 or 5 I really enjoy, and this is on there, but they're like, it's a weird list, as we said. We were talking about it not long ago. But yeah, highly enjoyed this. It is one of the tougher movies. This one and I'm Still Here were like probably the toughest watches, just from what like the context and what you're dealing with, because this is very brutal. The name says, but The Brutalist is meant to be more, when we get into the film, more about the architecture, and it's kind of the style of the time and what he's doing as an architect. But like dealing with some serious issues after like running away from World War II, trying to make a life of his own with his cousin at the time back in America, trying to figure out what he needs to do, trying to find ways to get his wife and niece to America as well, who were still in Austria-Hungary or Hungary at the time. I can't quite remember. But yeah, it is quite a traumatic look at this man's life. From, well, when did it start? I can't remember if I wrote down the dates.
I think it was during the Second World War, right?
It is, but at the start of every act, it had like a little title. Yeah, 1947. Well, the first act was from 1947 to 52,
Okay.
which I liked. Well, we've watched a lot of Wes Anderson movies, so I've come a bit more accustomed to like chaptering in movies, and I enjoy it because it's a good visual way of just even breaking apart the movie for the audience as well, without kind of like
showing the chapters like Quentin Tarantino, like chapter one.
I feel like a lot of directors do it, but I feel like it's done well here because you're like, okay, I know what period we're in, I know what we're dealing with. Yeah. And I can't remember the name of the first title, even though we've kind of jumped into it a bit. Did I write it down? The Enigma of Arrival. So great title. First thoughts out of the way before we maybe spoil too much. It is still relatively new. What did you think of the film, Darren?
First thing, I saw the duration of the movie, and then it took me back a little bit. It's like, okay, this is a very long movie. Yeah. I was happy that they included intermission in the movie with a countdown clock as well.
It's built in.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
I was like, that's good. I like the graphics in the beginning because after the first hook of the movie, when they introduced the sequence titles, the actors and the cast and the crew, it had that kind of industrial reels kind of the text coming through the screen. I like the graphics. And I think, obviously, a lot of work went into the movie. It's not just like, yep, here's a film, watch it. But they actually thought about all the details, all the graphics, how they can present the information in different formats. I like that. And the first thought about the movie is this is a very grand movie. It's a big movie. A lot of storylines, a lot of cool characters. And I think now Adrien Brody is back to his dramatic role. Yeah. This feels very similar to The Pianist.
I remember when it first started, I'm like, is this his character picking up from The Pianist? This is part 2, which I found was funny. And was also nominated and got awards for that as well, which I found funny. I'm like, oh, he's going back. Going back to it. But I feel like he has been on a better trajectory. I've already talked about, we've watched a lot of Wes Anderson movies, and he shows up in a lot of those. So he is still a good actor. I just felt like he's probably finally found his way back in, maybe.
So I think he try himself on different kind of roles. But I think like now he's back to his roots, like doing the dramatic role.
Definitely.
And like you can tell the difference straight away.
Yeah, straight off the bat.
So another impression that I got for this movie is like the coloring is very well made. I think during one of the trailers, like the image of him standing in front of like the grinding and like the sparks coming from the metal.
Yes, a lot of those shots early on. Yeah,
it's very beautifully shot. It's got a stellar cast as well. Guy Pearce is back playing the antagonist in a way. So very well acted movie as well, and I'm sure that you have a lot of good impression on this movie as well.
Yeah, like there's a lot going on in this film without trying to spoil it too much at the beginning, for the get go. But yeah, it is a truly amazing film. Like you said, I feel like it's a grand movie in the scale of like time, not like as we think now, like grand battles, grand scenes, like grand events. There are some like maybe one grand event in this, but it's like grand in the sense of scale and time and what it's dealing with. Because it's over, I think it's like 30 years. Well, even it goes to nearly the end of his life. So it's even like, was it in the 2000s? So it's even like 50 years almost, the lifespan of this character. And I feel like it does a great job of like every point of his life. his struggles and his pains and how it carries over or how it doesn't escape from it. And it does an amazing job, I feel like, of telling his story and getting it across. And like you said already, I'll point on them all, a lot of those amazing scenes. The Sparks ones, I think that's the title where he's like standing over and it's got like the sparks flying.
Yeah.
But because there's a little bit of a spoiler, he's an architect. So there's a lot of shots of like architecture and like the scale of things and how things are built to show or even project something in a certain way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, like obviously that needs to be shown a lot. But it is truly amazing. Like like I said, we said before, it is a long ass movie. So it's hard to recommend if you can't put in the 3.5 hours, maybe a bit longer.
Yep.
So if you're not willing to commit to it, it can be a tough watch.
Yeah.
But I think it is an amazing film and like does a great job. And like I think we talked about this in one of our other episodes, but it got a bit better reception now. It's made like a little bit of money, but it started off a bit rough just because it's gotten a bit of hype from the Oscars now and it's got a bit of life. But it's tough when these movies don't find as much success as you would like them.
But you mentioned in the beginning that the director came out and he announced that it's not making any money. Can you give us a bit more context about that?
Well, not much more than that, but it was more literally like he was saying that it was getting a lot of nominations, but not much financial success, which is, like I just said then, it's hard for somebody to be like, oh, I'm going to go watch this 3.5 hour movie, right? If you're working and you finish at, 5, 6 and you're like, oh, what am I going to watch today? Oh, Brutalist. Oh, not going to finish till 10, 11 o'clock. Okay. So it's tough. Because even on the weekend, you could be like, oh shit, if I watch this midday, it's probably going to be about 4. I'm going to be dinner. It's like, it could be a long thing to commit to. So I can see why, like without it being any hype or any built up stuff about it. But that's tough about these movies, especially like not when everyone's doing, we talked about this as well in another video, where like an Oscar movie or a movie built to be a bit more artistic usually isn't built to make money. But you can tell by the director, he thought, oh no, maybe he thought there could have been some success with this as well as the accolades. Yeah. And that can be a tough thing to find with these films. But I am glad that it like found a bit of life after and hopefully still, I'm sure it's still out in cinemas at the moment. I know it's probably haven't got like a wide release, but hopefully still finds some life after.
The thing that I miss the most is that now, like, we don't talk about the DVD sales, like.
Well, that's the thing they miss out on now because it goes to streaming, and I don't know exactly how the monetization like works out on that stuff, but I'm sure it's not as good as like directly from DVD, right?
100%. What I want to get to as well is just like when I read on the budget, this movie was made on just a $9.6 million
which is
budget.
Crazy.
Yeah, so this is one of those movies when I watch and I was like, this movie feels a lot more expensive than the budget for it. And I think that you have to give credits to the whole production team, like how they managed to make the movie look so expensive, look so grand scale, which is a limited budget. Exactly. And then vice versa, you have some movies with hundreds of millions of dollars. It feels cheap.
Yeah, they don't feel as real as like and all complex as this, which is insane.
Pretty much. Yeah, so do you want to get into the movies and then this is a very long movie.
Yes.
But I think that we can discuss some of the favorite segments, some of favorite
as
acting.
best as we can. I feel like for me, there's a lot I enjoyed a lot about this film.
But I think I want to get out of the way first as well. This movie got nominated for the Best Picture, but it got into a bit of controversies because it was found out that the production team used AI to assist Adrien Brody, Hungarian-English-Jewish voice. And I think it's kind of affecting his chance to win Best Actor from the Oscars.
I guess we'll see in the next couple of days or so. Well, by the time this is out, I'm sure we already know. Yeah. But it seemed like it was only his Hungarian accent for when he was speaking Hungarian or whatever. Yeah. So it's not like too rough. Like I could imagine like it'd be a hard accent to, nail down. But I guess we'll see in the grand scheme of things. But it is an interesting talking point. We do go further into, like I said in another video, so I don't know if we need to pander on it too much, but it is an interesting thought to think about.
Yeah. So let's talk about your favorite segments from this movie.
Starts from the start of the movie to the end of the movie. I love the opening scene to this. The niece, who we don't know at the time, is like sitting in like an interrogation room. Yeah. Getting like questioned, yelled at her not speaking, and then like crosses over to his wife, who we didn't know either, is like reading his note or reading her. I think it's her note to him, right? And him like his journey from like, I think he was like getting on a train, or it's him escaping, trying to get out. Yeah. And it's such a poetic scene to just set up. It's like, oh, okay, we're at the end of World War II. Yeah. The occupation of the Germans has ended, but the Russians have come in. He's just trying to escape them as well. Yeah. So it's like, it just sets such a perfect scene, and him going to America. And it's just like such a lovely scene of like maybe not understanding what's going on, but like sets what's happening.
Yeah.
And kind of like what both sides of the story. There is kind of two sides of the story, but kind of like what Adrien Brody's character is dealing with. Laszlo? I think his name's Laszlo, but
László Tóth. Yeah.
But yeah, so he kind of sets up the scene for him of like he's running away from his family and trying to find a better life away from war. So
yeah. One of my favorite shots during this sequence as well was when he was getting on the train, and it was shot in a one shot. And so you follow him from the ground into the train, through the crowds, to the windows, and I was like, man, this is great. This is what I think that this is what good cinema is.
Yeah,
you follow the character, and you don't really pay attention to the shot. Well, for us, because we have seen it quite a few times, so we say, oh, this is a one take. But first, like, oh, we are following the character, and and you're right, like. For me, during this sequence, it's like, oh, he got out of the Germany occupied country, and that's just the start of the story.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. That's what I mean. You're starting off at a pretty turbulent point, but I think that's the point. Like, it plays into what happens to his character later down the film, and you can maybe understand the choices he makes or doesn't make even. Because I think that's an important point for this character of like the turmoil he's already come from, and understanding what kind of other turmoil he creates for himself or even puts him in. So it's a bit more understanding. It's like, oh, why would he do all this? And it's like, he's come from some shit. Like it hasn't been smooth sailing to get here already, right?
Yeah, so from the setup, obviously he's been through a lot of challenges. But there's one segment that I wasn't very clear on the purpose, which is the one in the brothel.
When he goes to the brothel to sleep with someone. Because I assume he's been, I don't know how long it would have taken in this time, but like a month or so for him to even get to America. But I think this is another way of showing his character.
Yeah.
Of like kind of who he is, that like, even though he's married and has a wife, he still kind of succumbs a bit. Like I think even in the moment, he's still like a bit taken back, but he still goes through with it. Like, but it's just kind of like a part of his character kind of shows them, like, oh, okay, maybe he's a bit of a womanizer. Maybe he does like to sleep around a little bit.
Yeah. And
it kind of sets the stage for that. I do, like we say in these films, like show us. And it kind of shows that I'm like, okay, he's, can succumb to those desires.
Yeah.
He isn't maybe as strong with that as we would think. And there's other things he isn't as strong in without the movie, but it kind of just shows you his weaknesses as well, which is also important.
And do you remember one of the biggest turning points in the story for him? For me, I think the biggest turning point was when he got hired to design the library. But, before that, he met with his cousin.
So his cousin takes him in. They're in Philly? Is it Philly?
Yeah.
And he's got like a little furniture store and he works there with him. He had a little place set up where he can stay. And then they get this big job from a rich guy. He's like, oh, my dad's out of town. I want you to redo up his old library because he loves new architecture and stuff. And they're like, that's it. Yeah. And he gets his new job. I think they get, it was like $2,000 or something, $2,000 to do the job.
Yeah.
Which at that time's a decent amount of money.
I think he was quoting for something a bit lower. I think his cousin was like, I would
have done it for like $600 or $700.
Yeah,
something. He would have done it for less. So they're like happy. It's like, okay. He's like, at this point, we're like, okay, this is cool. This is like a good opportunity. He's going to build himself up. But as we learn later at the end, when the father finds out, must have been they're like close to finishing. Really close. And he comes in and he gets upset. He's like, he starts swearing and yelling at him. He's like, I've just brought my mother home. What are you guys doing? Get out of my house. What are you guys doing in here?
Yeah.
He's like, I just found some black guy out the front. Like, what's going on? And he like pretty much they don't fight back. They like try to tell him, but he's not hearing it. So they kind of like walk away.
I think during that sequence, I think the cousin was trying to explain the situation. Like your son asked us to design this, but I think László in this case was like, no, just let us finish this. But it was more for him to be like, no, this is my project. I'm finishing it. And I think that created a tension between him and the cousin. Because after this, they came back and they had an argument. And the cousin was like, that I'm doing a favor for you. Why are you hurting my business?
Yeah. Because that's when it first comes up. And then the cousin tells him all the issues he's been having with him. And it kind of comes to light. And then he kicks him out because he's just like...
I think the cousin created another issue as well. Like, are you hitting on my wife?
Yeah,
so that as well.
He brings that up, but it never shows it in the film.
Yes.
That he actually sleeps with his wife.
Yes.
It just hints at it. And I think he does. He never admits to it, or he does. I think he says...
But I think like the cousin's wife was hitting on László. Hitting on László, like when they had the party at night.
No.
After they won the contract. and they were dancing, and then the cousin went to sleep.
No, the cousin told them to dance with each other.
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
pushing it, and he didn't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
do it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even later at night, he was peeing in their apartment.
Yeah.
And I think she was just like, she was kind of suggesting then he should move on. She didn't want him there, so I feel like it was part of her being like, oh, he made a move on me, so that he would kick him out.
Yeah.
I think she wasn't comfortable with him there.
Yeah.
And that's like another thing that leads in this whole movie about how they feel comfortable here, running away from home, being persecuted and stuff, and then coming to America and kind of experiencing the same thing anyway.
Yeah.
And just using lies to get rid of him. Like he had like the whole deal with the library is like fair enough. Like that was a lot of fair enough, but it was just everything that added up. He's like, oh, you've done this and this.
Yeah.
I want you gone. Like, well, I've already done enough. I'm not going to like dob you in. I'm not going to like tell your wife what's happening, but just go.
And after that event, I think he went on to have a few other challenges. I think he was trying to find a place to sleep at night, and he had to find a different job that has nothing to do with architecture.
So he met a friend as well. Is it George? Was it George? He met at like
the homeless shelter or something, right?
Oh, what's the soup kitchen? Like they'll give away free food, and he was in line with him and his son.
Yeah.
And he made a little friend there, and then he goes to him, and then I think he finds a homeless shelter. But that's when he also dives into drugs.
Yeah.
I think we figured that we came to discussion and found out he was probably shooting up heroin. But him and George were doing it as well because they're both in a rough period. They're both homeless, trying to find work, trying to find a better way out of life.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're like, okay, he's also kind of given into this vice now.
And then the second enticing event happened. So the father actually realized that he got gold in his hand, like, oh, this is a very well-designed library.
Yeah, he kind of comes around to it, right?
But probably because he's got a lot of recognition from his famous friends, rich friends that come into like.
We learned that a bit later about him, but he probably realizes like, oh, who did this?
Yeah.
And he's like, he probably told him the names of the guys that did it, and he looked him up and was like, oh, actually, he's like a renowned architect back in Hungary, right? And that's when he like comes back. He's like, oh, hey, I know you did my library and stuff. I want to give you the money for it because they didn't get paid. Obviously, that's why he gets thrown out. And he ends up giving him the money. And he's like, oh, you should give that to my cousin. He's like, no, I'm going to give it to you. And obviously this is leading to something else because he wants more from him. But this is just like to get in his good graces at this point, right?
So the interesting event is like, I think after he got paid for the library and then he got invited into this kind of new world, the affluent world. This part for me in the movie was a bit blur because for me it's like, okay, so you get invited into this family and I can't remember where the conversation for designing this grand scale building came from.
So he invites him there.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I just want you to come and hang it. Like at the start, it just seems like he wants him there to show off. As like a rich guy's like, oh, look at this fancy architect guy I know.
Like a pony, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like a fancy gun or something fancy and just showing it off to his friends. So he does that. He brings him out to dinner with all these other rich friends. And I think he's chatting and he's like, oh, he's this architect and blah, 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 blah. And then there was another guy next to him who...
Oh, he's a lawyer, isn't he?
Yeah. And he's talking about how his wife's still stuck in Hungary and then they can't really come here. And he's like, oh, I can help with that. So that was like another point where it's like, okay, he's found someone that might be able to help get his wife and his niece to America. As they're chatting through the whole time, why have I forgotten the name of Guy Pearce's character? I can't remember. I can see his face. I remember writing it down. Whether or not I can understand my own writing is a different thing. Van Buren, that's his last name. But he asks him, he's like, oh, my mother just passed away. I want to do like a big memorial for her.
Yeah.
I want to build this big thing. And I want you to design it, essentially.
And the sequence where he introduced the idea was a bit weird as well. So he asked László and all his friends to leave dinner, walked out on the field, walked up to the hill, and he was like, this is where I'm going to build this memorial thing. Thank you. Now we can go back.
Yeah.
I was like, this is such a power move that you have such an influence. We can tell people just to follow.
Well, I think that's the thing. That's the idea because they all get up there and like, oh, do we have to be out here? And he's like, no, we got to like talk about this. And even then, when he like told the idea, but even that was interesting when it was just them two talking, just sitting down. Like, I think they're just having a drink or a smoke, but they're like chatting to each other. And Adrien Brody or László was talking about how he started in architecture and what he thought about it. And that was very interesting. His kind of mindset or what he thought about architecture because he was talking about the war and how it stood over time and that even after all these terrible things have happened, it still survives, it still lives on. So that's how he sees it. And then he's like, wow, I really like our interesting conversations. He says that like every time they talk, he's like, oh, I really like these interesting conversations. I'm like, all right, mate. And that's when he like delves into like, oh, I want to build this thing. And then that's what I mean. From there, that kind of lives, it's like the second part of the first arc, essentially, of like he's kind of gone through this struggle and like trying to figure out where he sits, somehow managing to do this thing for this rich guy. And the rich guy's just like, hey, I want to show off a bit. I've got shit tons of money. Let's do it. Let's build this multi-million-dollar, what do they even call it? Like they call it like a community center.
Yeah.
But it's going to have like a church, a gym, and like it's going to have all this stuff. Yeah.
Memorial. Yeah. And I really like the part where he did the mock-up for the building. So he actually went through all the metering and wiring.
Yeah.
I thought that part was really well made, and it seems like a love letter to the architecture, just like Wes Anderson to journalism, right? So,
yeah, it's definitely shows that does a good job of showing like how the architecture works. Maybe not the complete griminess of it, but like the ideas of like how László worked and how he kind of saw things. Because as he does talk about it later a few more times about what he's trying to do, but like his use of like concrete and blocking and how he sets up like the cross so it like will shine a light, and how he leaves it all clean, and then he's got like the white cement slab, what's he call it?
The marble slab.
The marble slab.
Yeah.
So he's got like a clear vision of what he wants. So it's kind of like a minimalist, plain, but showing off a lot of light and stuff. When we get to the end of the movie, we'll explain kind of like what he's actually getting at with it. But it is very interesting. Like that's what kept me so interested. I'm like, oh, this is so, apart from like the inner workings of the drama.
Yeah.
Because this is when László kind of gets obsessed with this project.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows you when one point in the film, they're like, oh, he wants to make cutbacks. We've got this other architect coming in.
Yeah,
he's going to like show where we can make cutbacks or do something different to save some money. And László just loses his shit and is just like, no, we're going to do it this way no matter what.
Yeah.
And he's literally like, oh, you can take money from me to make this happen. And it kind of shows his kind of like obsession with architecture.
Yeah.
Or even with this building in general. But this is still the first half, but this is a bit later. But they do get like these family back as well. So kind of working with this rich guy has like opened up so many avenues for him and his ability to kind of live a life here. But we find out even through the first half that it isn't kind of as smooth as he probably would like it, right?
But, obviously, when you deal with the dark side, you get some of the perks as well. So his family got brought back into America. And I don't think that could have happened without the help of the lawyer of this rich guy. And I think that when the wife came back, it's just introduced another layer of conflict as well.
Because that's at the start of part 2, I think, when the wife comes back.
Yeah.
But it's even interesting just because, like you talk about, like it's giving him access, but that's just kind of like who you know. Like whether or not they're good or bad people.
Pretty much.
It's just about, even with anything, it's just like who you know. If you know someone on the inside, you're probably going to get help with it, right? Rather than like doing it the legal way, which he was trying, but it's just like paperwork and logistics, and they'll never find it. And they're like, you never know, especially back even then. Like even now, it's just as bad with like logistics and government. But I do think it does a good job of showing how it all kind of works for him, and that like working with this guy has just kind of opened his doors. And he can because he ends up hiring George and stuff, like giving him a better life and helping out like him and stuff. And it's like, oh, we're hoping it's about to get better, right?
Yeah.
Even though it does show that he's still using a little bit throughout. Like I remember there was a point, I think he asks George if you have any, and he's like, no, like he's even like, he's like, no, like
I'm off it.
Yeah, he's got like a young kid and he's like, no, like I want to try to straighten my shit out. This is like a good chance for that.
Yeah.
But there's the other turmoil as well. Like the town don't want this to happen because of who's doing it, because he's Hungarian or even Jewish. They persecute him and think he's, maybe think he's a Nazi or something, right? So that's like another thing he has to deal with. Like already, like we see it from his brother's wife, and we see it from now the townspeople in where he wants to build this. They kind of don't want him to do it because they don't believe it. Like, oh, we don't want this like outsider coming in and doing it, right?
But that got glossed over a little bit because during the council meeting when he presented the mock-up for the building, and then he demonstrated it by using a flashlight. And after that, like they started the foundation of the building.
It's just to prove the concept, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously Van Buren's probably just like, oh, I'm going to do this building or whatever. And he's like, oh, who's designing it? Oh, I've got this Jewish guy from Hungary. And like, some outsider coming in, like immigrant coming in to design like a big building in America. America, not much different now, but that's what I mean. It's like easily just to be like, oh. So that's why they wanted to do this whole thing, right? Because they know they can like show it off and prove that it's like, it is something. It isn't just, I don't know what it would have had to be for them not to do it, but it's like it is going to be something for everybody and going to be good for the community because that's what like creating jobs and doing all that and like longevity and stuff. So it's crazy that it's just like even when they've got like such a rich guy that's ready to back it most of the way, right? It is an interesting like they deal with like a lot of logistics behind what's actually happening.
Yeah. Now that I think of it, this movie contains a lot of glamour shots for the construction industry, for the architecture industry. Well, I mean, like it depends on the industry. Obviously you can't really show off people, in nice suits and things like that, but they show like the process of making metal, of making concrete. I found them extremely interesting and well shot.
Yeah, definitely.
But then we got introduced to the second layer of conflict between him and his wife and the niece.
And the niece.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about this kind of conflict? How would you understand this conflict?
They've been writing letters the whole time.
Yeah.
And so the first time he sees his wife, she's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shock for him.
Yeah, so that was like the audience didn't know either. So this is a shock for him and for us. And she's been sick the whole time. I think it was from malnutrition because not enough food.
Yeah.
And so she suffered and she's like lost the ability to walk essentially. So the niece is like pushing her in a wheelchair. So that's like the initial shock.
Yeah.
And even talking with his wife, she's like, oh, like it is like a bit of a level of like, he's like, oh shit, like what have I... But it doesn't show much. It seems like he's like, all right. They do have a moment later and a little bit later after when they're in bed with each other and they're like she's talking very sensually with him, but he's just like still a lot of pressure with the building. It's still a bit of shock from dealing with finding out his wife is being disabled because, it's just a lot on his mind. And it's like, oh, this as well, right?
Yeah.
So it is quite a traumatic thing, and you're like, oh, and you feel bad for him. He's like, oh, fuck, like you thought he's just like, if you had your roller coaster, he's on the up, and he's just like he's coming down again. He's coming down the other side.
Yep.
So it is. I did like it because I'm like, not that he needed more turmoil, but it's just like, oh fuck, like come on, like you almost, it would be nice for him just to be with his wife, and something there. Like I don't think it needed to be there, but it does play into the story very well. I feel, and the actress, I always forget her name, but she does. She's amazing in this as well.
So Rafi Cassidy,
yes,
yeah,
she's amazing, and like she sells it so well of like longing and like longing for him. She longs for him, but he's just like. The bed scene's amazing because she's like literally like, I want you. And he's just like deadpan, like not absent from it. But then she has this speech. I won't get into what she's doing, but she's like, I'm like, I see what she said. I'm here for you. I'm here. She's saying something in his head. I can't remember, but he's like crying. And it's clear like a huge moment for them to like come together again eventually, like kind of push through the wall, whatever's holding him back. And it was a powerful scene. Like there's a lot of powerful scenes between both these two, but I was just like, oh my God, like this is... It's crazy.
And from what I understand, is like the conflict between this husband and wife is, obviously they need to reconnect after a long time.
Exactly.
And, and I think, they need to spend time with each other. But I think at the moment, László is so occupied with this project.
As well,
And, you can see how obsessed he is with the project. And I think his wife is there to act as an anchor for the reality that he can achieve. Like if you are doing this building to build a new life, to get happiness, well, I'm here. You don't need to have that building. You can have happiness with me. And I think this is where her role plays in terms of the story structure. So she is the other choice. So it's either happiness with the family, or you either that, or you have the timeless legacy of your name with the building. And I think this is where the main conflict, the main internal conflict within László is presented to the audience.
Well, not even at that point though, because we get a bit later down, but there are other struggles. But I think she can clearly see, because even he tells her, he's like, oh, I've given up like my part of the share so we can keep building the building my way. Yeah. But she's at this point, Van Buren's like, oh, I can get you. She's a writer. Yeah. So he's like, oh, I've got like, I can get you a writing job somewhere. Yeah. And she's like, oh yeah, cool. And she even says like, hey, we can use my salary to like, help us. And he's like, what? But he's like even a bit taken back from it. So, because that's even the thing, you say that he's like fighting between us, but I don't think he is. I think he's still sold in to the building. Like he's there for her, but not maybe in the sense that he could be. He's still obsessed with this building, right?
100%.
It becomes more important than anything, right? Until we get to like the crash. I think that's the turning point.
Yeah, so that's another enticing event. I think all of the enticing events in this movie were presented very well. It's just part of like the mayhem that happens when
it all makes sense,
massive
right?
project.
Yeah. Something with hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Pretty much. And what was the actual crash? So I think we only found out about the event through words. We didn't see it.
Yeah, we didn't see it.
Yeah.
Which is like a part of the budget, right? That
The
whole budget would have been blown on this train crash, right?
Yeah.
So is it like the manager, one of the main guys that runs it? He's like, I think he talk to László first. I think he tells him the one that was bringing in like some of our steel or iron or something, like it went off the rails and crashed and killed 2 people. He's like, shit, that's not good. And then Van Buren comes in and is like, we're fucking done. We're done. We're finished.
Yeah.
The community already didn't want this done. Now that they've found out there's deaths involved, they won't want anything this to be ever done. We're fucked. We're done. We're done.
Yeah.
And then László's like, what? Like, and he's like, he tries to speak to him. He's like, no, this is it. We're done. He's like, you can stay here still, but we're done. Like, we're not building this thing. So when he goes back to his house with his wife and he just has a mental breakdown, he's like smashing his shit.
Yep.
He's upset. He's sad.
Yeah.
And she's like trying to comfort him to be like, this isn't it, right? Like, this isn't done.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. Like, but that's what I mean. He's so sold to build this building that he can't get past it.
Yeah, I guess like this reminds me of Kobe Bryant trying to win his ring, and I think that during a lot of the final games, he broke his finger. He damaged himself trying to get this legacy thing, and I think this is another theme that this movie was dealing with: obsession with excellence, right? So obviously, he's a very talented architect, and he's got the buildings in the past to prove for it. But after you achieve one milestone, you want to achieve the next milestone. And for him, this is like the pinnacle of his career.
This could be his big thing, right?
This is like my legacy. This is what people would remember me by. So I understand that. And what happened after he smashes the things in the office? Like does he stay there still? Or?
No, because they've got to start again. Like he needs to work.
Yeah,
still.
He needs a job. Yeah.
So it like cuts. Are they in New York now?
Yeah.
They cut back.
Yeah.
He's working in like just a normal
like a draftsperson.
Yeah, in an architecture place.
And who came to visit him?
He's one of the mates of, I think it was the lawyer.
Yeah.
One of the mates of Van Buren to tell him that we can get back to it. But at this point, he's just living with him, his wife, and his niece. But his niece, this must be a few more years now down the line. And the niece has got a boyfriend now, also Jewish, and they want to go to Jerusalem, kind of like their hometown, not hometown, but like it's their like religious site.
Yeah.
Usually where they all go or try to live there.
Yeah.
We all know that shit. Like we know about the Palestinian stuff. So, but that's what they're trying to do, and him and his wife are a bit taken back because they obviously really care for her and they don't want her to go. So they're a bit shocked. Like, why are you doing this? This isn't good. This is safer here. And they like, and then after a bit of time, they let her pass. And like, sorry, we kind of reacted that way. We're like, we don't want you to go. We can't. We're going to miss you, and we hope the best for you. And then that's when he's like, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it was Mike. I can't remember. He's like, I came past today and said it's back on. And she's like, what?
Yeah. And I really like the framing of this sequence as well because we saw this shot through the hallway door where we saw them sitting on both sides of a small dining table, and it feels like they are sitting in a small prison in a way, and like. It gives me a feeling of like being stuck, not being able to break out. And I think this is where the niece has an option. Like, I don't need to stay in this small prison. I can travel to a different country. And I think this shot itself has another layer of meaning as well because then László was like, I also have a shot to get out of this prison if I finish this kind of building.
It could be a little bit for his own escape as well.
Yes.
But I think it's more of his... It could also be seen as another thing. Because he is trapped as well trying to finish this building.
Yes.
Like he's still drawn in to do it. So that could be another prison.
Yeah.
He's not escaping the prison. He could see that as a prison, but he's only going to like another prison essentially.
Correct.
It isn't like freedom in the sense that we think it is.
Yeah.
Because even at this point, him and his wife at this point are really talking about how they feel about living in America and they're not sold on it. They're kind of like, we're not really treated that well. It's taken a lot for us to get even to this. Like they're taking a bat. They're probably hoping for a bit more I don't know, acceptance maybe, a bit more love. Like they feel like they're just gone to one struggle to another, right?
And I think during this dinner scene, the wife mentioned something like, "Oh, everybody's leaving me, so I'm all by myself." And then I think László was trying to convince her, "Oh, not like that, honey. I'm just going to finish this project, and we're going to have happiness."
Yeah.
But I think that we kind of knew this is kind of
We already know.
lie.
Yeah, he's already lying to her because we know that he's more obsessed with this building still.
Yeah. But then, I really like the sequences where he walked to the underneath layer of the building where it's got all the giant beams, water. Those shots are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Showing off the building itself.
Yes. And then we got into the sequence of him getting the marble slabs. Those shots, man.
Yeah.
Like,
in Italy, those shots, I was like, oh, these are sick.
Probably that's where all the budget went in.
Well, maybe them, going to Italy and going to these slate mines. Because I even love the scene where him and Van Buren are just waiting at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
He's like, where is he? Why isn't he showing up yet? He's like, oh, he's probably just a bit late. And it was literally like a minute later. And he's just like, oh, there he is.
Yeah.
So it was like, it even shows that he's kind of like back into it straight away. And they're already flown, to Italy to find this slate because he was, as we've already seen with László's character, he wants it done his way because I think, like you said, it's his thing. It's his like, what he's hoping will last.
Yes.
So he wants it done right.
Yes.
So that's why he's willing to go to these lengths.
Yeah, and when they got into the mine and, like those shots are amazing. And, you can really see the scale of the project. And it looks like another cave and another prison that he's walking himself into. And I think during this kind of sequence, we got a really dark secrets that got revealed. Why? Because it's one of the newer movies. I'm not sure if you want to spoil this.
We've already spoiled it now.
Yeah.
Like you've come this far, we've like talked about the movie anyway, but we'll delve into it. So he's with his Italian friend, they're having a party. So they're all dancing together. He's like dancing with this girl. And she like kisses him a bit, but he like moves away. Not like, because it's weird at the point where like, at this point I was like, oh, that's nice. Like he's, he's staying faithful. And that's why even then I was like, oh, he probably didn't sleep with his cousin's wife. Like it doesn't seem like that's what really gets to him, right? But it is another thing that gets him, his addiction that gets him.
Yes.
So Van Buren goes looking for him because he noticed him walk away. He's like, what the hell is he doing? And he's strung out on like a couch out the side. Clearly. Because we even saw before he left that he went under his... No, did we see him take the heroin with him? I can't remember. But he clearly had it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this scene is where it's like, oh, fuck. Like, this is where you kind of really know what Van Buren really thinks of him. Because he's this big rich guy, but he has no artistic taste. He has no skill.
Correct.
He's just rich. And he sees him in this vulnerable state and he's like, he just rapes him.
That's
and he's literally saying all these horrible things. He's like, you're terrible. You're like, look at you strung out, hopeless Jew. Like he's just like berating him and saying all this terrible shit to him. And he's just in such a like, hopeless state.
Yeah.
And he just takes advantage of him.
Yeah.
And it's like, even talking to the grander scheme of their relationship, that's like a metaphor for their relationship. He is just using him for his own benefit. To get his own gratification.
Pretty much.
And when it's done, he walks away. And it's that's what I thought when I saw this scene. I'm like, oh, it's horrible, but it's such a scene for this film of like him using László for his own benefit to bolster himself up, to make him feel better and grander.
Pretty much.
But really, it's just ugly. It's just an ugly thing.
Yeah. It's just in a dark alley with no one else. And then, just horrible languages, horrible actions. Absolutely. And I think that scene is stuck with me throughout the movie from then on, because throughout the movie we always get we get to witness like the grand scale, blue sky, big building, lights. But then when that scene happens, it's just darkness and just quiet as well. So
because that's what it's usually
contrast.
like.
Yeah,
because that's what I mean. It is a big moment in the film, but how it's done beautifully because it is just like that kind of moment.
Yeah. So what is the aftermath that László has to endure after that?
Well, that's even the funny thing, because the next morning they go to get the slate.
Yeah, it's like nothing happened.
And then
right?
Van Buren's doing the classic gaslighting thing of being like, oh, you were a bit like out of it last night. Do you remember?
Yeah,
like he was clearly like glazing over what happened. And at this point, we don't know if László knows what happened or not. But they go and watch the slate and like nothing happened, essentially.
Yes.
Like they kind of go back to it.
Yeah.
They look at even the slate scene was amazing when the guy pours the water over it and he like looks down the slate. That was another amazing scene.
Yeah.
But I think this leads into him like the getting it done, right? This is kind of like the pinnacle of like, oh, It's like, okay, we get the gist of what Van Buren wants. I think, I don't know if László understands, but he's like, this is what he thinks as well.
Yeah.
And then they finally get it done, right?
Yeah.
But even that, it doesn't feel like a gratifying moment, does it, in the film?
But I think there was a small sequence before we got to the end of the movie where they presented the completed building. His wife rolled up into the house and then she yelled at Van Buren.
This is a bit later. This is even much later. So they've finished the building. He's home with his wife. So she has horrible pains.
Yes.
And she wakes up in the middle of the night and she's in horrible pain, but she usually has drugs that she can take.
Yes.
And she's out.
Yes.
But he still has his heroin.
Yes.
So in this point, he gives her heroin, him and himself's heroin, to they trip together essentially. But he, from what we hear from his wife later, apparently he was pretty open with her and tells him everything that happened. And clearly the rape that happened, he tells her about it.
I see,
But even in this point, she has an overdose.
Yes.
And he runs her to the hospital and they save her. But then that cuts to the next scene
of
her going to the house. And she's like, oh, what's happening? And you're like, oh. You kind of grasp it when she's walking in there. And you're and as soon as she says it to him, it's like, Van Buren, you raped my husband. And the brother, his son and his daughter are there and he's just like, what the hell?
And this is another long take as well, when Van Buren heard the news and he went upstairs.
He disappears.
And then the son follows the stairs. So we follow the son, went upstairs, went into the rooms, went downstairs, and then went out. And that's, this is a really good long shot again. And, it feels like we have this anxiety following him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, this is a very well planned out, great cinematography. And I think after that, did we end up finding out what happened to Van Buren?
I don't think it shows it because I remember watching that bit and oh shit, what was that? But they follow him into that building, but it kind of ends on the slate and I don't think it shows anything past that. But so I don't know if it insinuates if he died or anything, but there's not much rest of the film if we're going through it now, but I think it does kind of show he's even how little stability he has in his own thing of even because he never speaks. As soon as the accusation is thrown at him, you're I don't know if he ever rebuts or anything. I know his son does.
In the beginning, he was saying these are just horrible accusations, but he knows it's true. And then we got into the exhibition with László and who gave the speech?
No, his niece's daughter.
Yeah.
So this is the epilogue. Is that right? That's the end of the film.
Yeah.
So we've gone through everything and this is the end. He's in his sick and old in his wheelchair. They have they're in the museum having his exhibit and it's showing and she's talking about his architecture and what it means. And it's a beautiful way to end the film of because like you said when he's talking to Van Buren before, it's no matter what happens, the architecture is going to last.
Yeah.
And even the way he builds it. And I do love that she explains what the building means, and she explains that he took inspiration from when they were both in internment camps, and the building he built for Van Buren was an encapsulation of how they felt being stuck in his prisons. Very hard, dark walls, only a little bit of light sealing through at the top. I thought it was a beautiful way to show that it's he uses architecture to deal with his problems, and this was one way of getting it out. And we see why I was obsessed, but I think that was part of who László was.
Yeah.
There was a lovely kind of touch at the ending there when his niece's daughter is speaking about it. Yeah. And it's crazy. Or was it Denise? I can't even remember now.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of weeks since the film. I'll have to double check. But it was beautiful. I felt like it was a very touching ending to kind of
What was the final sentence that she said? People usually say that it's not about the destination, it's all about the journey. But, in László's case, it's all about the destination.
Yes. Because that's what we do. Because another point when the wife and when László and his wife are chatting, they really get into the point this isn't for us. This place, they came to the conclusion this hasn't worked. This is not going well at all. Us trying to make a life in America, and I think that's what it means at the end. Because it's the twist on its head, right? Like you say, the saying is. It's not the destination, it's a journey. But this turns it on its head of being saying it's not the journey, but it is the destination. And it's very touching for this film.
Yeah.
Because the destination of America didn't work. The destination of Hungary, Austria didn't work. So it's sad in that essence of his destinations were these buildings essentially. So it was a beautiful, I thought it was a beautiful ending for this brutal story.
And it gives the character a lot of depth as well, because now we can actually see his inner turmoil coming out on the surface. Because, through a lot of the movies, we know that a lot of filmmakers try to explain to us what the character is feeling, what trauma they are going through. But it's very hard to have that kind of touchable, visible object. In this case, the whole building is actually his own prison that he built. Yeah, so I think there are so many layers of meanings in this movie. It's a long movie still.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of you to sit through and pay attention, because it's worth it. Like we've already discussed, there's so many things like going through this film, like dealing with addiction, dealing with
acceptance, immigration to another country, legacy, all that.
There's a lot of stuff and a lot of layers. Yeah. But the overall story of like them being trapped in like a place they don't want to be is like their prison.
That is the end of the episode. Let us know what you think about the conversation in the comment section below, and smash that like button.
Ring the bell and subscribe as well, and you better be back next time.
And we will see you in the next episode.